Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're at. My name is Jason Barquero. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here for Claremont Graduate University. If you cannot hear me, or you can hear me and you can't see the screen, or there's something just not that doesn't seem right, as always, I ask all of our participants that in the chat section, if you can just type a quick message below and say, "Hey, Jason, I can't hear you," or "We can't see the screen," or something like that, and then we'll fix it quickly. So, but it seems from what I can tell here on our dashboard that everything is working appropriately. So, welcome to our CGU Alumni Professional Development webinar, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. It's been a while since we've done one of these, several months since I think it was sometime last year. And due to popular demand, we decided to go ahead and bring these back. And we're excited that we always get a large number of folks that are interested in register. And so just so you know, a couple of house cleaning notes. If for some reason you got to pop out and you think you're going to miss a good portion of this, or if you know someone that may be registered and could not attend live on this broadcast, we will be sending out this recorded broadcast afterwards. So you will be able to listen to it or watch it actually on the alumni community website, which is alumnicommunity.cgu.edu. But we will send out an email to everyone. So don't feel like you have to take notes if you don't want to. Just listen, absorb. We'll have this up so you can listen to and view, and you can always go back to any parts of the presentation that you find very useful. So before I introduce our fellow alum, Steve Kim, a couple of reminders about the alumni office. As always, alumnicommunity.cgu.edu is the place to go for all of our information in terms of what's going on and upcoming events. I want to remind you that if you're not on LinkedIn with us or you're not on Facebook with us, that you look us up on Facebook. I believe it's facebook.com/alumni CGU is the direct link to it. If not, if you just type in, I'm sure, CGU Alumni, you'll get to the Facebook page and you can like us there. Or on LinkedIn also, Claremont Graduate University Alumni Engagement is our LinkedIn page. I think some of you got the message about this event through LinkedIn. But if you're not, link in with us there. It's a closed group for our alumni and friends of the university. And so just we'll go ahead and approve you to be on there, and then you can be a member of our alumni group. Aside from that, as always, I would not be doing our development folks in our advancement office justice if I did not remind you all, of course, and thank all of you for being so kind and so generous during our last call campaign. We had a very successful annual fund call campaign over the spring. Many of you probably receive phone calls, and I know sometimes they're a little tedious and maybe not always at the best time of the day. We're all alma maters, I'm sure, and so we know how that goes, but we appreciate that you've picked up the phone, that you've talked to our folks, and that some of you in some cases have given back here to CGU. And so your support, of course, is what keeps these kinds of programs and things like that at no charge and no cost for you. And so we appreciate that as well. And if you have not, or you'd like to donate your time or even support us financially, if you go to our giving section in the alumnicommunity.cgu.edu page, there's a red button on the right-hand side there. Can't miss it. It says Give Now. You can go ahead and click there, and it'll give you some instructions on how you can support CGU. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me directly, and we'll be glad to guide you through that. But thank you all for your great support over this last fiscal year. We're really doing a neat job here in this office, and we're trying to ramp things up, and we're excited for the next year. So that's that. I won't bug you too much with that, but I'm ready to introduce our fellow alum an example of someone who has volunteered his time, and we appreciate that, to bring you all some pretty neat content, change your habits and change your life. And with me, I have 2012 Executive MBA alum from our Peter F. Drucker School of Management, Steve Kim. If you don't know, or maybe you didn't read the bio, I'll just kind of give you some quick other snapshots from the bio that was sent out. Steve is the principal and founder of Mind Your Bliss, which is an innovative relational learning platform and support system that helps folks like you take a mindful approach to achieving more of one's potential through developing better habits. Steve is also available to offer this program and continue the coaching well beyond this session, of course, so it doesn't end here. You can always contact him directly if you feel that this is something you would like to follow up on. He earned his bachelor's degree in economics at UC Berkeley, so he's a smart guy, I would say. And of course, his MBA, like we said here at Drucker, in 2012. And if you got the email that we send out, you can read more about him there. But he's a guy that I've known for years during my time here at CGU. Great guy, is always engaged with the school. And he said, hey, I got something I want to give back to the school and to the alums and talk a little bit about changing their habits. And he's going to talk about that. So you can take some notes, and he has some interesting stories to share along with that as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Steve. Oh, one quick reminder, there is a poll question that we would like you to take. If you click on the polls there, there is one question there, and we'd like if you can click on an answer that best applies to you so that Steve can get a gauge kind of where you guys are at, and kind of take the conversation from there. If you have questions throughout the presentation, in the chat section, you can type your questions there. And I don't know if we're going to be reading them on the fly. We may just gather the questions, and we're going to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to answer your questions related to the topic. So just hang tight, but do type in any questions that you may have, since there's no audio for the audience. So with that, take it away, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be on the call with everybody. And I've really enjoyed my time at the Drucker School, and it's a great opportunity to spend some time with you folks. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is a mindful approach to habit change, achieving more of your potential and the results that matter most. There's a lot to unpack in that statement, but hopefully as we go through, I can share a little bit of my own personal journey and what it meant to me in terms of changing my own habits and how it impacted my life in a positive way. So why don't we just jump in, and we've got a lot to cover in a fairly short period of time. Interestingly, the Mind Your Bliss, the inspiration from that, I don't know if some of you are familiar with Joseph Campbell, the mythologist and anthropologist who is best known for that phrase, follow your bliss. And at some point in the later parts of his life, he grumbled that it should have been follow your blisters instead of follow your bliss. And so a lot of folks took that as a license to gratify and indulge in pleasures and hedonism. So that inspiration came for Mind Your Bliss, and hopefully we can go about it in a more mindful way. Okay, that's fine. All right, terrific. So following the Gary Sinek TED Talk and the Power of Why, I thought it would be good to start with that in terms of why we're doing what we're doing and the things that matter most to us and to our company. And our mission is mindfully to contribute to a happier, better world, and then more on an individual level to inspire, encourage, and empower growth-minded leaders to make the most of their strengths while minding their bliss in the service of the greater good. Our vision is to become the leading relational learning platform, providing an innovative support system of accountability partners, mentors, coaches, helping one another thrive, changing habits, and changing lives. So I think it's important that when we talk about changing your habits and changing your life, that we try to get a better understanding of, well, what does that mean to us individually in terms of what matters? And to even answer that question of what matters takes a tremendous amount of thought and energy and self-reflection to even determine what that is at whatever point you are in your life. And I think that's part of what this is all about. Is really, it's about the journey and your own process of discovering inside of you that intelligence and that wisdom that can connect to that greater sense of meaning and purpose in your life. What does it mean to thrive? I found that this is a pretty decent and good definition that I ran across. Wellness is a state of optimal well-being that's oriented towards maximizing an individual's potential. Lifelong process of moving towards enhancing your physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And I found that this is a pretty good working definition, especially since to thrive and to succeed is really a function of a process, and it's not an event. I've heard it said many times that success is a process, not an event, not even a series of steps per se, but it's really more of a direction and destination. Although there are milestones along the way that lets you know, hopefully, if you're on the right track. So some of the factors that I've run into in terms of why people are not able to thrive is this feeling of being overwhelmed. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Day to day, there's just too much to do and not enough time in the day to get it all done. And this is kind of a cute slide in terms of to-do lists, so many things. And of course, the person on the right, the caption, I think captures some of the state of mind that we're often find ourselves in, is being scattered and pulled in too many different directions. It's been often said that we live in this age of distraction with the amount of advertising, social media, news outlets. We're bombarded with information and stimulation that our brains are not well equipped to handle and to be able to process. And actually, the amount of attention that we can give to any person, project, or situation is fairly limited. This is a great little quote. Attention is a resource. A person has only so much of it. And as I've gone through my own personal change journey, I've realized more and more how limited and scarce our focused attention really is, and how little we actually have of it, and the importance of being able to utilize that attention in the way that's most productive to our well-being. Some of the ways that people are turning towards dealing with this feeling of overwhelm is this idea of the mindful revolution, this idea of developing some type of a mindfulness meditation practice. And this is on the cover of Time, where the science of finding focus in a stressed out, multitasking culture. And I know that a lot of companies, from the Googles, the eBays of the world, are looking at mindfulness as a way to better cope with this feeling of overwhelm and this feeling of being bombarded with too much information and stimuli that cause us to not able to focus on the things that really matter. Okay, this is a quick poll. I'd love to, if you could just answer this poll question, just so that we get a little bit of audience participation in terms of do you have a mindfulness practice? Have you, perhaps you don't have one, but maybe open to starting? Perhaps there's some occasions where you have meditated, but if you wouldn't mind, if the audience could just click in the answer that best describes your situation, that would be great. I'd love to see from our audience what level of participation in terms of a mindfulness practice. If we could do that, I'd love to share some of those answers as well. Okay. Is there a way we can see the poll?
And if you're having trouble seeing the poll question, just let us know. But we would like if you can just under polls, just take the quick question and click on the answer that's on there.
Okay. All right. So moving along, it doesn't seem we're going to be able to get any of the poll questions answered. But regardless of where you're starting from, if you've ever practiced mindfulness or have any type of meditation practice, this is a useful definition of what is mindfulness. And this is an interesting photo of mindful or mindful. And you can kind of notice the caption, the person, he's got all these things in his mind, versus the dog, who's basically just looking at whatever it is that's in front of him. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. That's a quote by John Zabit-Kin. And so what I'd like you to do, just take a moment right now and just kind of take a few deep breaths and just take a look at the picture in front of you, and just sort of observe something about that picture that perhaps you may not have noticed previously. Something that, it could be anything. It could be the colors, it could be the shapes. What's the person thinking about? Obviously the dog is, who knows what the dog is thinking about, but and just take a moment and just take that in. I know a lot of times we're on automatic pilot and we're just subject to our habitual routines. And mindfulness is about breaking that flow, that kind of that uninterrupted automatic habitual routine that we find ourselves in, and taking a momentary respite from that. So just take a moment, notice a couple of things that you normally wouldn't have noticed. I, for one, I'm looking at those musical notes. I'm like, what the heck is that? And the fact is that there's 4 green trees that the dog is looking at, plus the sun. All right. For those of you that maybe have never meditated, or perhaps I know there's a lot of misconceptions about what meditation is and mindfulness, and then for some of you that aren't familiar with it, this is a great little caption that describes some of the approaches and steps to starting a meditation practice. So maybe just take a few seconds and take a look at it. We're actually going to take a minute to do a short meditation. No big deal. Some of the highlights is just try to calm your mind in terms of just allowing yourself to just notice your breathing. And when you notice that your thoughts are going away from the attention of your breath, just bring it back to your breathing. Try to relax your shoulders and arms, keep your legs, feet kind of planted on the ground. And so we're going to take a quick few seconds. I'd like everyone just indulge me for a few moments. We're not going to spend too much time on this because our time is fairly limited together. But just, if you're sitting right now, you can either close your eyes or keep them open, and just take 3 deep breaths. So if you could all just join me in just taking 3 deep breaths. Okay, and after you've taken your 3 deep breaths, if you would just please just silently and quietly just count to yourself 5 breaths. And then as you start noticing your thoughts and as they start wandering to something else, like I've got to go to that next meeting, when are we going to get on with the next thing, just count to yourself 5 breaths. Okay? And so just kind of slowly come out of the counting your breaths. Notice something around your surroundings that you may not have noticed previously. It could be a color, it could be a sound, it could be a sensation, it could be some detail, something that you probably wouldn't have noticed previously. And a last tip is that meditation isn't really about the length of time. It's really about the frequency, in the same way that you don't get strong by lifting one giant weight at a time. Even if you take about a minute, and that took probably about 1 minute, 60 seconds, you can start with 5 or 10 minutes a day. So even if it's just taking a moment, a few deep breaths and counting your breath until 5, and then maybe repeating it again, it does start to make a noticeable impact, just to have that momentary interruption from the continuous flow of your day.
Real quick here, if I can interrupt, Steve. I'm getting to the question section here, so I apologize, everybody, for a little late. So it appears that some of you might have had some trouble viewing the actual poll question, and that's fine. I completely understand. Some of you did answer, so if you want to answer it now, I know the earlier question was how often, do you have any mindfulness practice? A few of you said no, and so we appreciate that. We have one of you here that says on occasion. We have a couple of people who said yes. We have one of our alums who said 7 times, so that's great. And And so if you want to go ahead and type in your answers to how often do you practice this, and I'll ask you a question while we're doing that, Steve.
Sure.
And I know that this is focused quite a bit on meditation, but if I can, there may be some of these folks that are listening that are saying, well, I practice mindfulness in a different form. What other forms have you seen that also work for people to kind of to kind of stay in the now, as they say, and focus on what's in front of them and staying mindful, that could also supplement meditation?
Sure, that's a great question, and I know there's a little bit of confusion between the two terms, meditation and mindfulness. Mindfulness is a broader provides a broader context, and you can mindfully eat, you can mindfully walk. There's a great exercise of eating mindfully one single raisin as you sort of savor the taste, the texture, the smell, just the chewiness of it. So there's many different forms of mindfulness. Meditation is a particular practice that focuses on paying attention to your breathing, but it's certainly just one method. Similar to working out, exercise, there's lots of different forms and things that you can do, but it's really about just harnessing that attention that you have and redirecting it to your breathing as a way of strengthening that attention. And it could be something other than just your
Mm-hmm.
breathing that you can focus that attention on. So yes, there's many different forms of mindfulness, and certainly that's meditation is just one form of it.
Yeah, one of the alums here said, I'm starting a daily meditation practice called Living by Heart. It's 10 minutes of attention, quote unquote, attention a day. So thanks for sharing that. Another one of our alums said, tried on a number of occasions, but have not been able to sustain a practice. Do you find that quite often, that some folks will try, but then how do you make sure that you're consistent and you stay on top of that practice?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually that's going to be the next part of what we're going to discuss. You know, I took a class. I don't know if some of you have taken Jeremy Hunter's class on mindfulness and self management, and I remember hearing about the benefits of meditation and how good it would be to start one. Although, like a lot of things in life, you hear something, it goes in one ear and out the other. It's one thing to know what to do and why you should do it, but then to actually translate that into a daily practice, that's where the rubber meets the road, my friends, and that's really what the heart of what we're going to talk about is how to translate some of these ideas into a habit. Um, Mindfulness can help you cultivate this awareness, increase your capacity to focus, and help you make intentional choices so that you're better able to focus on the right things in the right way. But essentially, how does this become part of your life? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with that quote. Habit is is basically an acquired behavior pattern regularly followed until it becomes almost involuntary. This is a great quote by William James. All of our life, so far as it has definite form, is simply a mass of habits. Um, and of course, bearing us irresistibly to our destiny, whatever the latter may be. So, Mind Your Bliss is about changing your habits and in the process, changing your life in a positive way. In order to develop these habits, though, you've got to first make conscious choices and decisions. You have to exercise your volition, your will. And what I found in my experience is that this capacity to make those conscious choices, this active will, this volition, is extremely scarce and a limited resource. And you found that different folks will employ different strategies to conserve that energy. This is a great quote. You'll see, I only wear gray or blue suits, Obama said, to pare down decisions. I don't want to make decisions based on what I'm eating or wearing because I have too many other decisions to make. And that is one of the things that I realized is that through the course of the day, when you have so many decisions to make, it's really hard to focus on the things that matter most. I know that studies have shown that just food decisions alone, that the average person will make something like 200 different decisions when they think they only make on the order of maybe 15. Um,
Read a comment. So we have
yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
We have a really good comment here from one of our alums. Just want to read that out. She says, sometimes it's hard for me to discuss meditation in the academic sense, since for me it is simply a part of my cultural upbringing, as did my parents, my grandparents, and their parents before them. I learned at an early age how to truly take my mind where I wanted it to be. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, I think as you start developing that muscle, that ability to focus your attention, then you're more in control. You're not on automatic pilot. Just to give you an example, I remember when I started practicing mindfulness and meditation, one way that it translated into increased awareness is I remember one day my kids were in the back of the car and they're arguing, then fighting and screaming, and I remember getting really upset and telling them to quiet down. And it was really strange because in that moment, I started to recognize and I became aware of my own frustration and anger and impatience at the whole situation. Now, I was still upset and still yelled at them and wasn't really in control of my emotions, but it was an interesting milestone in my own awareness, development of my awareness, that at least I was recognizing the fact that I was getting really upset about the situation. So I think that when you develop that awareness, then you can be more intentional about the choices you make and how you might respond in a situation rather than completely being reactive and on automatic pilot. This is a great behavior change model that BJ Fogg came up with, and there's a lot here, and we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'd love to kind of go through it. It gives us a framework of understanding how behaviors are triggered, and he said it's a function of motivation, ability, and some type of a trigger. So when you have a high amount of motivation and you have high ability, or in this case, maybe easy to do versus hard to do, you're more likely to perform that behavior. So, for example, if you're going to run a marathon, for most people that's pretty hard to do, and low motivation to do it, you're probably going to be where that sad face is, and the behavior would not be triggered. This is another graph that illustrates a little bit more in detail high ability, high motivation. So ability is also a function of simplicity, which he has some different factors that consist of time, money, physical effort, brain cycles, social deviation, non-routine. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but the fact is, if something takes a lot of time, then that would decrease your ability to do it versus something that takes a little bit of time or money for that matter. If it takes a lot of money, then your ability will become less. Motivation, there's pleasure, pain, hope, and fear. The higher your motivation, the more likely you're able to perform that target behavior. And then also there's got to be some type of a trigger, whether it's an alarm, some kind of a reminder. And I'll explain a little bit about how that translated into ways that I was able to change some of my behaviors.
But before you could ask you one quick thing.
Sure.
Oh, actually, I want to read one quick thing. We have from
Yeah.
another alum here. Going back to the slide, I thought it was an interesting slide, the one on the quotation from President Obama. And one of our alums says, is being on autopilot necessarily a bad thing? It seems to me the blue and gray suit decision is one designed to put the issue, what to wear, on autopilot.
Yeah, no, actually, there's a lot of things that habits is really a form of being on autopilot. And there's a lot of things that we want our lives to be on autopilot. I think the key is to be intentional about what those things are and conserving our energy for the heavy lifting in terms of the self reflection and thinking about what matters and what's important. So, certainly, I found that even with my fitness, health, nutrition habits, as I was able to pare those decisions down to limit it to a certain number of items per day that I can choose from, it tremendously helped me to make better choices. So that's certainly not a bad thing. This is a quick graph. It tells anywhere between 3 to 36 weeks is kind of the median time to develop a habit. Some habits that are a lot simpler take a lot less. This is walking for 10 minutes after breakfast. So it kind of gives you a framework in terms of the time frames that that it might take. This is a change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And when I work with clients, I always like to understand where they're starting from in terms of their readiness. And this is a framework by Prashkaska in terms of the different readiness of change model in terms of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. And so it's always important to know where you're starting from, because with each of those stages, there's a different strategy in terms of what you might employ to help facilitate that change. Another thing that we need to be aware of is the fact that 10% of our behaviors is dictated through our conscious mind, and then most of it is really a subconscious, our beliefs, our emotions, habits, values, protective reactions. And when you develop that awareness inside you, you're able to bring forth some of that subconscious behaviors into your conscious awareness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate, as quoted by Carl Jung. This is a readiness assessment rating. It's part of a coaching conversation that we have in terms of specific behaviors that you might consider changing. This is I want to share a little bit of my own personal journey as in terms of how this was able to translate into my own life. I'm Fat Steve, poor eating habits, no exercise, no accountability, low energy, uninspired. This is about a year ago in August of last year. I was at a Boy Scout camp with my son, and that was me as of August the 1st. And then I'm going to show you some pictures of my transformation. And actually November 1st, that's when I took the before picture, because I really didn't believe when I first started that there would actually be an after picture. And then you can kind of see the transformation of 3 months, 6 months, and then 8 months. And then I recently completed a Murph challenge, as a CrossFit challenge where you run a mile and then you do 100 pull-ups and 200 push-ups and then 300 air squats and run a mile again. And I did it under an hour. So that was pretty good. Not bad for a 48-year-old guy. But more importantly, the way that I started this process was, I got to the point where I wasn't feeling very good, to say the least. I was feeling lightheaded, and I wasn't happy with the way that I looked and the way that I felt. And I think sometimes it takes that point of where the pain of your current circumstances is great enough where you start thinking about, wow, maybe I need to do something. So knowing what I know about changing behaviors and habits, I employed a strategy that allowed me to choose a target behavior that I felt was reasonably doable, which for me was to just simply tie on my running shoes, put on my running shoes, and then just walk out the door. That was my big goal, is just to put on my shoes and walk out the door. And whatever I did after that, I would be completely okay. Whether I walked, whether I jogged, whether I ran, that was my big goal. And I remember running for like 100 yards and then having to stop because I was so winded. And this, by the way, is an after picture of me about a month ago with my son in our Boy Scout uniforms. And so I didn't even have that much motivation to run because it was quite painful. My knees were hurting and I was gasping for air. But I think that what kept me going was the fact that I had a certain goal where I broke it down in smaller bite-sized chunks. I would run to this one utility pole, and then the next day I said, well, maybe I'll run 10 yards further. I could barely run maybe an eighth of a mile. I remember going to my kids' high school and trying to run 1/4 mile around the track. I couldn't do it. And I think that's where a lot of self-development and self-help programs, seminars, messages, they get lost in terms of being able to translate it into daily activities and habits, because it's kind of like trying to feed a delicious steak dinner to a baby, and not knowing where you're starting from is really, I think, a key weakness in a lot of these change programs. And knowing how to take that next step safely is really, I think, a critical component. And so the Mind Your Bliss framework and mindset for approaching change and changing habits is really a function of little by little, day by day. It's not a month to month process. It's not even a week to week, but it's really a day by day, little by little, take the next step safely, and really understanding where you're starting from while keeping the end in mind is really the key to success in making these habit changes. Um, and then also feeling a greater sense of self-efficacy by taking greater control of your attention. I think that can be enhanced through meditation and developing some type of a mindful practice. And then allowing yourself to feel self-compassion. I remember running and feeling really bad about myself, and a certain degree of shame and guilt came into play, thinking, how did I get myself to this point? I feel lousy, terrible. But then just really exercising a certain amount of patience with yourself and compassion. Patience is really defined as the ability to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. And I think you have to exercise a certain amount of patience with oneself. And then trusting in the process, in your particular learning, growth, and change process. And I think that's one of the things that we offer that's unique, is really not so much offering specific content about here's how you get in shape or here's how you eat better. There's so much information out there. You can Google. There's more information, more knowledge than we know really what to do with. We know more than what we can act on. I think the key is, how do you start that action plan and build that momentum of action that can help you at least get started. And so 6 key elements to an effective habit change program is the key. I think one of the keys is you got to start small. Start with a tiny habit that you can piggyback to an existing routine. So for example, if you have a routine of brushing your teeth, you can say, well, after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do 1 push-up. I think that's been a good change behavior strategy or tactic, is to piggyback on an existing routine, because we have routines. Or you might say, after I drink a glass of water, I'm going to uh, text my mother, or I'm going to write in my journal, or whatever the case might be. And then you've got to track your activity and progress. Did you do it? And this is something that I resisted in some ways. I've heard that you have to count your calories and do this and that and the other. And I said, oh, no, that's too much trouble. Well, I think that if you don't track your progress, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. And of course, a lot of the things that I do today, there's no way that I would have been able to start doing them, a year ago. But as you start to evolve and to kind of develop more capacity, you're able to do more of what you want to do. And then get back on track or adjust to smaller steps. Yeah, the one key thing to realize is that the axis of motivation and ability, those are things that you can influence. You can increase your motivation. You can increase your ability by making it simpler to do. And then also, I think it's important to see the end in mind. What's the 9 or 10 result satisfaction rating? And in terms of the kind of person who does that, I think it's important to understand that making the habit changes without a corresponding change in your self-image is, I think, is really fighting a losing battle, because you can start making the changes, but if you don't start making the changes on identity level, I think that's what really helps maintain that sustainability. So it's not just a matter of making changes in terms of your health and fitness, but also on a more deeper identity level, accepting that that's the type of person that you're becoming. And then getting support and accountability, or a focused coach, um, I think is a really key element of what helps you stay on track. I remember having a focus partner that actually was the catalyst that helped me start a meditation practice, because even after having taken a lot of those classes with Jeremy, I never started a meditation practice until I got paired up with my focus partner, and then she and I say, hey, why don't we do the 21-day Deepak Chopra meditation? And so she and I, we both agreed. So by the next time we had our focus call, I didn't want to let her down, and I already opened up my mouth, big mouth, and I said, well, I'm going to start this practice. And so that's kind of what got me going. And then, asked her how she was doing with it. She asked me how I was doing with it. So having that accountability partner is kind of like having a workout partner. You sometimes you'll show up for somebody since you don't want to let them down. This is a kind of an interesting story with another focus partner that I had, where I asked her, I said, well, what's one tiny habit that you might change that can really, positively impact your life? And she said, well, I have a bad habit of drinking soda, Dr. Pepper, big gulp, every time I go to visit my mother. Her mother's in a convalescent home. And so, and it helps me keep myself awake on the 91 freeway, and I'd really love to change that. I don't think it's good for me. And I said, okay, well, how would you like to change that? Well, I think I can replace it with like vitamin water or something like that. Um, so to make a long story short, the main reason why she followed through on it was more along the lines of she didn't want to let me down. She said, oh, well, I already told Steve that I was going to do this thing, and I don't want to let him down. And well, and it was interesting. Maybe that part of that social pressure or of acceptance or rejection, whatever that might be, was sort of a catalyst that fueled her motivation. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, it started to become now a part of a way of living for her, where she was able to make some changes that are now sustainable. So having that accountability partners, that relational component, I think is really a key. And then, of course, reflecting and prioritizing by asking questions in terms of what's the value and what's the benefit of performing this activity versus the cost of not doing it. This is a great quote by Peter Drucker: follow effective action with quiet reflection, and from the quiet reflection will come even more effective action. And this is something that I've struggled with myself, just taking more time for quiet reflection. If I had to tell myself if I had to go back to my old self a year ago, knowing what I know today, that's probably one of the things that I would have done a lot more, is really take more time to think about what I was doing. Einstein is quoted as saying that if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he would spend the first 55 minutes thinking about the problem, and then the last 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And I think that's really a key component to being more effective, is really taking that time for self-reflection. Of course, a lot of us, we simply don't have time, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. And that's really, to me, it's a belief that could be self-limiting, and in many ways it may not serve our interests, because if you keep telling yourself, well, I don't have time. I was talking to a girlfriend that she was telling me, yeah, I just don't have time. I'm too busy. I'm always working. I was asking her if she was meeting people, or if she was expanding her social circle. And that was her first response. Oh, I don't have any time. I'm always working. I said, oh, okay, well, interesting. Is that a belief that's going to help you or hinder you? And so by developing your awareness through practices like mindfulness and meditation, you're at least able to become more cognizant of these beliefs that and these stories that you're telling yourself. Focus partner rules of engagement. I know we're going to be wrapping up our time fairly quickly in the next minute or so, but this is part of the innovative support system that I was able to participate and develop over the last several years. And this is focus partner rules of engagement in terms of that accountability partner. And these are some guidelines in terms of how we interact with our workout partner, our focus on what matters partner, which I won't go into a lot of detail right now. So if you'd like to learn more about this mindful approach to habit changes and to sustainable behavior changes that can help you achieve more of your potential and help you focus on the things that matter, then I'd love to talk with you further about it. There's a way that you can schedule a complimentary 30-minute one-on-one coaching session with Steve at myb.schedulething.com as a service to the alums. I'd love to continue the conversation, and ultimately, I think it's about feeling more alive and happy in this world in whatever form that takes you. That's really the kind of the crux of what Mind Your Bliss is all about, is to have those authentic conversations and make those meaningful connections with folks that are like-minded, that want to grow in their purpose and their contribution in the world in ways that make the most of their strengths while being of service to others. So if there's one or two questions I might take, I don't want to go too far beyond our allotted time. I'd love to maybe answer a question or so, and thank everybody for participating on the call.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for that. And if you have any other questions, guys, go ahead and we'll stick around. I know we said we were going to go to 12:15, and we're at 12:16 now here Pacific time. For those of you not out here on the West Coast, but if we'll take a few minutes if you have some questions or anything else you'd like us to share. I know that one of our alums out here had said that her experience is that the pain theory of change is highly problematical. And have major differences with it. I don't know if you have any comments to that.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. If you're referring to the pain theory in terms of the pain of your current circumstances has to be greater than the pain of change. Bear in mind, guys, that a lot of these things that I've shared with you, they're just frameworks, and you have to take them with a grain of salt. I'm not sure exactly where that phrase came from, but it's kind of like the map is not the territory. And I found that a framework is just a guideline. It's a way to help us understand our world a little bit better. But even I would agree that in some cases, that's not necessarily true. In some cases, it is true. Sometimes you have to have enough pain in your current circumstances to become that catalyst for change. But oftentimes, that may or may not even be the case. But so I don't know if that answers it, but even BJ Fogg's behavior change model is just that. It's just a framework to help us understand, make sense of the world around us, and it's certainly not the be all end all. But the one key principle that I think that is universal and true is the fact that action reigns supreme. You've got to take action. You have to start moving, and I think that's really the key to any type of habit change or behavior change, is the capacity to take some action. There's a great quote that says that nature guides a rolling stone. Once you start taking that action while keeping in mind the direction that you want to go, I think that's really the key. You'll find the right book and the right person and the right resources. Believe me, when I started my fitness nutrition, I would YouTube. I viewed a lot of different YouTube videos, read a lot of blogs and posts, and then started figuring out what works and what doesn't.
All right. So with that, Steve, I think that wraps up our the questions we have in the comments. Again, thanks so much, Steve, for sharing this with us, spending some time. And as always, I'll use this opportunity to pitch the opportunity for any of you out there. Typically, we do these here live, and we're on campus here in Claremont. So if you're in Southern California, that would be great. We'd love to have you here on campus so we can do a live webinar, or we could also bring it to you. It would be great. All you have to do is email us and let us know if you have a topic or something that you'd like to share with alumni from, quite frankly, all over the group, all over the world. We have had alumni from overseas even plug into these, and it's why we like to do this. We know we can't reach all of you in person all of the time, all 18,000 of you all over the world, but this is a neat opportunity for us to bring you some content and bring you all together here virtually. So any suggestions? I saw some suggestions that did pop up, and we thank you for that. So any suggestions you have on how we can make this better, or any comments at all, you can email them to me. Actually, the best email would be alumni@cgu.edu. That's alumni@cgu.edu. I manage that account along with a couple of others, and that's the best place for any questions or concerns that you may have, or any suggestions that you have at all. And as always, alumnicommunity.cgu.edu is our website. You can check out all the event stuff and our giving page from there as well. I think that's it. Steve, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right.
Look forward to talking with you later.
Have a good rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye.